Have you ever wondered if you might be poly or if poly might be good for you? This is Reid from readaboutsex.com.
Cathy from the intimacydojo.com.
And someone wrote in and said, I would be poly, but for STDs, I'm really worried about those as a major concern. And when I wrote back and said there's lots of ways to have safer sex, since many, but not all, of course, poly folks are good about talking about their needs and getting tested and using safer sex practices, the risks may be lower than you think. And she wrote back saying testing is great, but someone could always catch something in the waiting period. And I wanted to address that.
Okay. Address it.
So I think if a lifestyle is right for you, realize that there are different types of poly too. So you might have, if you're concerned about the waiting period, which some people are very legitimately, that's a time when you're not sure if you have, they can't test for a certain amount of time for like HIV, for example, though that's gotten much smaller time frame now. It used to be 6 months or something like that. They weren't sure, but it's much shorter now. While you're waiting, some people are in closed poly relationships. So it might be 3 or 4 people that are not sleeping with anyone outside of that relationship, or they might be only having safer sex during that, with other people outside the relationship. So I think identifying a good relationship style fit for yourself versus, and then also addressing the concerns within that is a really powerful way to move forward and have the kind of relationship that really works for you.
Yeah, and wherever you're at is fine. Like, there are some people who be like, I would be a snowboarder if it wasn't for
cold
breaking bones.
Oh yeah.
So, like,
for me, it's the cold.
That's okay. You can do whatever you want, Cathy. But the idea of the things that there's nothing wrong with the things you want to avoid. So you can be emotionally poly, emotionally non-monogamous. There are people out there who love being in love and not having it have to be about sex. So polyamory, while it includes sex, doesn't have to include sex. So you could be poly and then have all kinds of intimacy and emotional intimacy and even certain kinds of physical intimacy.
Yeah.
Like maybe you're just into kissing or exchanging massages or, whatever. So if you come at whatever your life choices are, or that things that you're considering from, what are my concerns? And then educating yourself on the actual concerns, going down those rabbit holes, which can be scary at first, because then, oh my God, then sex looks really unsafe when you really look at statistics. But then when you go a little bit further down the rabbit hole, it's like, oh, here are the things that are treatable, and here are the things that are untreatable and fatal. Then you start to understand that, and again, like, you get to have your emotional and orientation and just your own thinking about these things. These are my opinions. I'm not saying they're the way. But I'm not worried about getting chlamydia as somebody who has no other autoimmune compromised situations, because chlamydia is treatable. So if I were to be exposed to chlamydia in the window and then test positive for it, because I get tested, I try to get tested every 4 to 6 months, then I would have caught that I had it. I would learn that I would have it before it would have done any damage to me. So then I can get treated. But you have to learn all those things and then figure out what your own orientation is towards those things.
Yeah.
So go down the rabbit holes. Figure out, like, well, statistically, like, if I was a snowboarder and I'm afraid of breaking bones, like, how many people really do break bones? What are the most common bones that you break?
And how high? What for the kiddie slope? How bad is it?
Yeah, and maybe I can learn to snowboard and just stick to the kiddie slope, or like, do the homework to figure, like, track your fear a little bit. Because sometimes in that homework, maybe your views and your position never change. And then you have the information now to be like, well, no, I've done the research. This is where I'm at. And these are choices that are good for me. And then sometimes in doing the research, a whole other piece opens up. Either way, it's more empowering, I think, to go down those rabbit holes. So, great that you're exploring the idea of poly. Have you what are the rabbit holes you can go down to be more empowered about your choices?
Yeah, I was really, really frightened of STDs, STIs. I'd heard a lot of scary things. And I actually was something I saw you teach that really helped me. It was, Reid asked, what is the most common STI? And everyone's like, chlamydia, gonorrhea. And he's like, no, it's the common cold. And I was like, oh, I've had the cold a bunch of times. It's not this stigmatized, scary thing. And then I started going through and realizing that most things are curable, the things that aren't. What would I need to do to feel safe about it? And once I was informed, it made it feel a lot more. I felt like I knew where my boundaries were, and I could play much nicer in that space.
So I hope this was helpful, and I also hope it felt non-judgmental, right? Like, we're all allowed to feel what we feel
and choose what
about
we choose.
the things.
Yeah.
Like, that's great. And in a society where we don't get a lot of permission to go down rabbit holes of empowerment around sex, where could we do some more learning that would allow us to be more empowered and grounded as ourselves, however we're feeling?
Yeah.
Those are the things I think that are important.
Thanks for writing in.
Yeah, thanks for the comment. I hope this video was useful, and leave some more comments.
Yeah, what do you think?
Give us questions. We need things to talk about. Thanks for tuning in, Sex Geek. If you would like to continue with the brain sex, do me a favor and click subscribe right here. If you'd like to watch me on social media, that's where you're going to go. Next video, maybe? And if you really would like your own Sex Geek t-shirt, please click right here, right now. Boop. No, really, like...